Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. I am the gluttonous, lazy concubine-born daughter. My eldest sister told me to seduce the general, so I did, and it actually worked. Preface. I am a concubine-born daughter of the household, famous for being the most gluttonous and the laziest in the family. And yet my eldest sister sent me to seduce a severe and ruthless great general. When I heard her say this, I froze completely. My mouth was still stuffed full of crab roast steamed buns that I hadn't yet swallowed, both cheeks puffed out like a chipmunk's. I stared at her in blank bewilderment. What? Me? End of preface. Please enjoy the story. The great general had achieved many illustrious military victories and had expressed his wish to propose to my eldest sister. But eldest sister's heart was set on marrying a certain top scholar, scholarly, mild as a spring breeze, and pure in character. She couldn't be bothered to give a second glance to a rough fellow like him. The great general was held in especially high regard by His Majesty, so if he truly came to propose, our family couldn't possibly refuse. Eldest sister devised a ruthless scheme. She told me to stake my own purity, to force the great general into marrying me. I returned to my courtyard wearing a sorrowful expression. My mother was calmly sewing a robe for me. She saw me sighing and said with a smile, "You know nothing of music, chess, calligraphy, or painting, and spend your days doing nothing but eating and playing. How could a great general possibly like you? Stop worrying about things that won't happen." I refused to accept this. Mother, don't underestimate me. Who knows? I might make one move and leave the great general so besotted he has no choice but to marry me. My mother rolled her eyes, then held the robe up against me. She pressed my soft belly and said with irritation, "Eat a little less, you've gotten fatter again." Then she let the waistline out by a few more inches. The maidservant Tsuetsue came in carrying a bowl of steaming hot 3 fresh wontons. Smelling the fragrance, I planted a happy kiss on my mother's cheek. My mother made a show of disgust. "If you get any fatter you really won't be able to get married." I tugged at her sleeve and acted spoiled. "Then I won't get married at all and I'll stay by mother's side forever." My mother poked me on the forehead and scolded me for talking nonsense. That night I didn't go back to my room but stayed in mother's room instead. She fanned me with a fan, waving away the sticky summer heat. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly as she stared absently at the embroidered patterns on the bed canopy. I took the bracelet I had hidden in my robe, slipped it onto her wrist, and smiled, "Mother, happy birthday." My mother's eyes went red, and she pulled me into a tight embrace. I rested against her shoulder and said softly, "Mother, don't go and beg the First Lady. Trust me, I can handle this." Among the 3 concubine-born younger sisters, my looks were unremarkable and my talents ranked last of all. And yet eldest sister chose me to seduce the great general. Clearly it was the First Lady who had put her up to it. The First Lady wanted to force my mother to take her side in the fight against concubine Zhao, who had recently joined the household. Concubine Zhao had been growing very much in favor with my father lately and privately showed no respect for the First Lady whatsoever. Even the daily morning and evening greetings she was required to make, she would often find excuses to skip them. The First Lady couldn't swallow this anger, and so she wanted to drag my mother back into the fray. One should know that 3 years ago, my mother had been a formidable player in the inner courtyard. The maidservants in the household would gossip behind her back that my mother was a fox spirit, an expert at enchanting people. My mother would hear this and only give a soft smile, then pass on to me this secret of controlling men. The First Lady regarded the master of the house as her husband and cherished him to the utmost. Concubine Wang viewed the master as her personal money bag and fawned upon him devotedly day and night. Concubine Lin regarded the master as her sweetheart and was always clinging to him. I snuggled into my mother's arms and humbly sought her guidance. Mother, so what do you see father as? My mother burst out laughing. I regard him as a fart. She continued serenely, your father is a fourth-rank civil official. In the capital, he's neither high nor low. During the day outside he toils hard over his official duties and still has to flatter those above him and intimidate those below. When he came home, he barely had a moment to breathe before he had to deal with the First Lady. Then he had to watch Concubine Wang perform her elaborate tricks, and then soothe Concubine Lin's broken heart. Hearing this, I offered my assessment. Father doesn't seem much different from a junior clerk at a brothel. My mother poked me on the forehead. A well-brought-up girl. What kind of way is that to talk? But her eyes were alight with amusement, clearly agreeing with my words. In the end, mother concluded, in short, treating him like a fart makes him feel more comfortable. But in the inner courtyard, some are in favor and some are out of it. Father visited my mother most often. Concubine Lin's place had grown cold and desolate. 3 years ago, when my mother was pregnant, she was harmed by Concubine Lin, causing her to lose the baby. Father was so furious he wanted to drag Concubine Lin out into the courtyard and beat her to death on the spot. In the end it was my mother who begged for mercy that saved her life, and then Concubine Lin was sold off that very same night. Mother sat on the bed holding me, silently listening to Concubine Lin's inconsolable wailing outside. I gripped her ice-cold hand and comforted her. Mother, don't be afraid. I'm not afraid either. She was the one who harmed us first. Mother's rigid body finally relaxed slightly. She rested her face against my head and quietly cried for a while. After that, Mother used the pretext of needing to recuperate, and moved with me to the quiet wooden courtyard. Father sighed and asked why she had to make things so hard on herself. Mother looked at him and wept, saying, Ming Tong, your affection is a blade that kills. In the end, please don't let only hatred be left between us, all right? Called by his name, Father moved his lips but said nothing in the end. He turned and left. The moment he was gone, Mother dabbed the tears from the corners of her eyes. She patted me, I was still standing there in a daze, and said, You see? A woman only needs one teardrop, and she can deliver a performance that wrings a person's heart. Being a wife sometimes requires a bit of acting skill. You must learn this well. I clapped my hands enthusiastically, my admiration was genuine. But looking at the exhaustion in my mother's eyes, I thought perhaps it wasn't entirely a performance. Mother clearly knew there was poison in Concubine Lin's soup, and yet she drank it anyway. The First Lady was outwardly gracious and generous, but in private she always had Concubine Lin come to oppress us. Worse still, they even wanted to arrange an engagement for me with a man known for being abusive, praising him as though he were a celestial immortal in human form, but my mother had long since investigated thoroughly. His previous wife had been beaten to death by him in a drunken rage. The First Lady and Concubine Lin wanted to push me toward my death. Of course my mother couldn't suffer this in silence. My mother sacrificed one child, drove Concubine Lin out of the household, and made the First Lady think twice about us. She also used this to withdraw from the battle and retreat from the inner courtyard. The night we moved to the wooden courtyard, Mother and I lay side by side. I burrowed into her warm, soft embrace and declared with great spirit, "Mother, from now on I'll be your pillar of support." Mother listlessly replied, "You'd be better off thinking about what to eat tomorrow morning." I protested indignantly, "Don't look down on me. I'm formidable, I am." Mother laughed all the louder, coaxing and teasing me, all right, let me see. What will the third miss of the Ning household do? Open a restaurant to feed me, or become a celebrated talent who will astonish the world?" The moment I heard this I was genuinely annoyed. Mother had actually been sneaking looks at my diary. I threatened to run away from home. Mother hastily begged forgiveness. "Oh my, the past few days you've been holed up in your room secretly scribbling away. Tsuetsue even suspected you were secretly exchanging love letters with some young man, afraid you'd been deceived by someone bad. So I snuck a peek at that little notebook. Good girl, it's Mother's fault." I was speechless. "Mother, I'm only 14 years old. You worry too far ahead." Mother yawned. 14 isn't so small. A few more years and things will get noisy again with everyone wanting to get you married." She fell asleep, but I lay there tossing and turning, unable to settle. I loved Mother and wanted to have real prospects so I could be her support. I racked my brain, recalling the time travel stories I had read, looking at what those protagonists usually did. Open a restaurant, no good. Among scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants were looked down upon. If I really opened a restaurant, Father would be the first to beat me to death, and Mother would be mocked by everyone. Becoming a celebrated literary talent was even more impossible. After I finished university, I couldn't even recall a complete poem. Thinking it through every which way, in the end there was only one path: marriage. Marriage was the career of a lifetime. Only if I married into a good place could Mother live in peace within this household. After Mother's misfortune 3 years ago, our lives had in fact become much calmer. 3 years hiding in the wooden courtyard, I had devoted myself wholeheartedly to studying the art of being a wife, with every intention of finding myself a husband after my own heart. In this ancient era, being a wife was a profession in itself, having to manage personnel, finances, and household administration all at once. Which was no easy thing at all. My target market was very clear: find a company with solid financial backing and simple internal personnel, and move smoothly into the position. So when eldest sister mentioned sending me to seduce the great general, his name had already been circled in red and hidden under my pillow for a long time. I had quietly researched this in great detail: how to become the great general's official principal wife. The great general was a skilled military commander with exceptional personal competitiveness. He was currently held in high regard by the emperor and had accumulated considerable wealth. The great general had no brothers or sisters, no need to worry about all the troublesome competition for favor. He was an orphan who grew up relying on others' charity. I wouldn't need to serve in-laws at all. The degree to which he matched my job requirements was probably 90%, truly perfect. What was even more important was that my level of education was completely beyond saving. People of this era valued the literary arts over the martial. This was especially true among the nobility of the capital. Every matchmaking occasion involved composing and reciting poetry, examining each other's cultural level. Men and women alike who lacked scholarship found marriage discussions difficult. This was also the reason eldest sister looked down so on the great general. But now things were convenient. The great general had no scholarship, and neither did I. Two unscholarly people together, neither could look down on the other for shallowness. So the very moment eldest sister mentioned sending me to seduce the great general, his name had already long been circled and tucked under my pillow. I had quietly and very thoroughly researched exactly how to be married to the great general as his principal wife. I had practiced all 18 necessary arts and was now only waiting to put them into action in a real battle. Early in the morning eldest sister had someone lead me to her courtyard, and she personally dressed and made up my face. Her eyes were red, she had clearly been crying. The day before, Su Qingyuan had come to the door to propose, and my father had not immediately agreed, his attitude vague and noncommittal. Eldest sister said angrily, "Father says the emperor holds that uncultured martial man in high regard and we cannot afford to offend him. As long as his marriage is not settled, I can't get married." At this she burst into tears again. Am I just a piece of meat on a chopping block for him? Once he's satisfied, everyone else has to get out of his way. I truly could not sympathize with eldest sister. I simply couldn't understand what was so good about that top scholar. He had made it to where he was entirely thanks to his aged mother and younger sister pinching every penny to support him through his studies. Now that he had become an official, he showed not the slightest care for his mother and sister. I had once encountered the Su family's younger sister. Her clothes were old and out of fashion. And his mother had argued with a vegetable seller at the market over a few coins. People of this era were those in which men lived off women's backs. Women were nothing but stepping stones for men, no one dared say otherwise. Now Su Qingyuan had consumed his mother's health and his sister's youth, and eldest sister was still eagerly offering herself up on top of that. Su Qingyuan may have entered the Hanlin Academy with boundless prospects ahead of him, but to climb up even a little would take at least 3 to 5 years of hard grinding. Eldest sister marrying him would mean enduring years of poverty and hardship. I said as much to eldest sister. She replied with lofty arrogance, "What do you know? Only when I have suffered hardship alongside him and emerged triumphant, will he always remember my kindness." I thought privately, in that case, sister has miscalculated. Once a man has achieved fame and fortune, he immediately forgets his roots. Right now he still places sister high on a pedestal, but the day he rises to a rank higher than our father's, he'll probably be full of resentment. Eldest sister led me to the general's mansion for a victory celebration banquet. On the way she briefed me in detail. When we get there, you just jump into the lake. My maidservant will immediately cry out for help. The general will think it's me who fell in, and he'll certainly jump in to save the person. When he pulls you out and discovers it's you, by then the rice will already be cooked. He'll have no choice but to marry you. I looked at her laying out this scheme with such confidence, and a wave of unease rose in my heart. I had always thought I was the foolish one, but it seemed eldest sister was not much smarter than me. So I asked, what if the person who jumps in to save me isn't the general? What if the general doesn't know how to swim and doesn't jump in? What if the general saves me but still refuses to marry me? Eldest sister heard all this and replied with arrogant certainty, "Don't worry. I'll have the maidservant specifically invite him out to the lakeside. He'll think I've fallen in. He'd risk his life to save me. As for him refusing to marry you afterward," eldest sister grew even more pleased with herself. "Humph, you're my sister. He has tarnished your purity and then refuses to marry you? Wouldn't that be breaking my heart for no reason? He certainly won't be able to bring himself to do that. I was stunned. This man had rolled through distant battlefields, crossed between life and death, and risen from a peasant to become a great general. On what grounds would he risk his life for eldest sister's sake? And what did having a sister matter? The general wasn't foolish enough to ruin his own life forever and marry someone he didn't love, just because he feared making eldest sister sad. I silently vowed to go home and burn that whole pile of storybooks under eldest sister's bed. All that reading had truly rotted her brain. But I never expected that in this ridiculous farce, the one playing the fool would be me. The general truly did jump in. I looked up from the water and saw him churning his arms in a paddling motion, swimming like a thrashing dog, toward me. I pointed at my own face as a signal. Look carefully, I'm Ning Tam. Don't bother saving me. I don't want to be married off because of a misunderstanding. If he ends up resenting me for it, life afterward will be miserable. The general had clearly seen my face, and still swam toward me with all his might. Once we were on shore, he snatched a cloak from the side and threw it over me. Eldest sister sobbed. Tamimi and I have been close since childhood. Now that her purity has been damaged, if the general does not take responsibility, I will resent you for the rest of my life. I poked my head out from under the cloak and cringed at every word. The general looked at me, then said with perfect calm, I'll go to the Ning household immediately to propose. I couldn't help a private moment of admiration. I really was still too naive. The influence eldest sister wielded over him was truly terrifying. The general finished speaking, paused a moment, then turned to look at me, and asked slowly, Ning third miss, are you willing to be married? His clothes were soaked through, clinging to his body. I glimpsed his firm abdominal muscles, his slender waist, his large hands with the clear joints and prominent bones, and my nose went suddenly hot, as though a nosebleed were about to gush out. I hastily covered my nose with my hand and stumbled out my answer, willing, of course, willing. Let eldest sister and me marry on the same day. She marries Su Qingyuan, I married the great general, a double joy for one family. The mansion was lit up with lanterns and decorations, and everyone was bustling about seeing eldest sister and me out the door. When I put on the red bridal veil and stepped into the wedding palanquin, I suddenly heard the matchmaker crying out in alarm, Wrong, wrong, the great general says the wrong person has been brought. Before my eyes everything went bright, someone lifted the wedding veil, and the cold, stern face of the great general appeared before me. He stared at me without a word, then grasped my hand and pulled me into his arms. Outside erupted into commotion. Only then did I understand. Eldest sister and I had gotten into the wrong palanquins. This time the great general made no move to return me to my original palanquin, but instead carried me directly onto his horse. His voice rang out clear and resounding, Strike up the music to escort the madam back to the manor. Firecrackers boomed, brilliant flowers of light burst into the sky. His large hand wrapped around my waist, and the warmth of it passed through every layer of my bridal clothes and reached my very skin. In that moment, I truly felt that I had become a bride. The streets outside were full of noise and bustle. Citizens crowded around begging for lucky money and wedding pastries. Just like that, I was carried all the way back to the general's manor in his arms. But I never expected that just as we were performing the marriage rites before the wedding altar, a royal decree from His Majesty arrived, throwing the whole household into fresh chaos. The great general still gripped my hand without releasing it, and in a low voice guided me step by step through what to do. I was dizzy with astonishment. I hadn't expected that His Majesty would bestow upon me the title of second-rank imperially commissioned lady. The wedding guests were all stunned into silence. In the entire history of this dynasty, no imperially commissioned lady had ever been so young. It was clear enough just how much the emperor favored the great general. Receiving this decree was like winning the top lottery prize. It meant that as long as I didn't do something spectacularly stupid like murder my husband, I could be the general's lady for the rest of my life in peace and comfort. His Majesty also bestowed upon me a generous quantity of farmland and shops, all as my personal dowry property. Not only that, but there were also monthly stipends, and additional imperial rewards at every festival and holiday. Without having done anything yet, I was already a confirmed official appointment, truly. The moment I entered, I had secured a permanent position. I was so delighted I had to cover my mouth with my hand to keep from laughing out loud. He, I now outranked my own father by 2 full grades. Let's see him dare scold me in the future. But that joy had a bucket of cold water thrown over it on the night of the wedding. After we had drunk the ritual wine with linked cups, the great general said only one sentence: "Go to sleep early." Then he left. He really left. He really, truly left. I lay on the bed, fished out my stash of melon seeds from under the blanket, and quietly nibbled at them for a while, suddenly recalling the words of advice my mother had given me last night. Your son-in-law is 25 before finally getting married. The wedding night will probably be a little vigorous. Don't be foolish enough to just bear it passively, push back if you need to. I had anxiously asked Mother, but what if he can't manage? Mother was so stumped by the question she nearly choked. She answered in a low voice, "Men are very proud about that sort of thing. Even if he can't manage, you still have to pretend that he can." The two of us had a very serious discussion about the male ego. Mother then instructed, "While your son-in-law has not yet taken a concubine, you should also enjoy yourself a little. When you miss him, take the initiative to tempt him. Don't waste your youth locked alone in your bedchamber." Quite right. I could keep my virtue, but I couldn't keep my virtue alive and well. His heart might belong to eldest sister, that was fine, I had no objections. But his body should at least belong to me, shouldn't it? I sent Suetsue to scout out where the great general was, then slipped out to find him myself. Unexpectedly, the great general was practicing swordplay in the courtyard. He was bare-chested, wearing only a light pair of loose trousers. The wind whipped past as moonlight poured down over him. I crept stealthily behind a flower bush. Looking at the dense crisscrossing scars on his back and his calm, handsome face, I unconsciously raised a hand to cover my nose. The great general finished practicing and casually scooped up a ladle of water, pouring it from his head down. The sound of water rushing, my heart rushing, my nosebleed rushing. The noise drew the great general's attention. Seeing my face smeared with blood, he was immediately alarmed. "What happened to you?" He hurriedly scooped me up in his arms and called out loudly, "Someone come quickly, fetch the physician." I quickly covered his mouth with my hand and stammered an explanation, "Don't, this is just from excess fire in the body. I'm still young, blood and chi are strong. This kind of thing is easily treated, all you have to do is..." His steps slowed abruptly. He lowered his head and looked at me. He needed to do what? I screwed my eyes shut. I was going to do it. He needs to kiss me twice and it'll be cured. Afraid he'd refuse, I struck first. I circled my arms around his neck and kissed him on the lips. The great general went rigid. Then his strong arms tightened, plunging deep into the soft small of my back. He easily pressed me against the wall, biting at my lips. I was swept up in a storm of wind and rain, all reason shredded to pieces, breath seized, consciousness dissolving. When awareness returned, I was already in the bedchamber. The great general held my knees against his own, moving forward slowly. His eyes looking at me burned hot, and he asked with stubborn insistence, "Third miss, are you willing?" His gaze was like a storm of fire scorching my heart. I covered my face and made a small sound of assent. He still wouldn't let go, pulling both my hands up over my head and forcing me to look at him. I endured my embarrassment and bit my lip, staring back at him. Candlelight flickered through the bed curtains, and I could see clearly in his eyes something like a wild beast stalking its prey. He looked at me fixedly, as though he wanted to swallow me whole. He asked again, "Third miss, are you willing?" I made a tiny noise like a mosquito, willing. His mouth said such things, but that other hand of his, already making me tremble, how could I escape? The great general pressed down on my waist, nipping at my ear, forcing me to answer, "Willing to what?" What came after that, I couldn't remember what I said, only that in order to get him to spare me, I cried and begged and babbled incoherently. By the time I was pressed to the point where my head drooped over the edge of the bed, and I glanced sideways, the candle had burned down, pale light from outside the window filtered in dimly, and both my legs were still draped over his shoulders, aching, sore, numb, and half gone. In the end I couldn't take it anymore, and cried myself to sleep. I only dimly felt him carry me for a bath, change the bed sheets and coverlet. Lying in that clean, fragrant nest of quilts, I lost consciousness entirely. In the days that followed, married life with the great general was sweet, and thoroughly shameless. Now whenever I see him, my legs go soft. Recently he has been on leave and stays home all day, not stepping out the front gate, not stepping out the back, clinging to me like a shadow. I looked at him with full bewilderment and said, "General, doing nothing all day, isn't that a bit excessive? Please go out drinking, riding horses, boating on the lake to listen to opera. You can do anything, just please stop hovering around the household." The great general, leaning back in the armchair, shot me a glance and smiled with hidden meaning. "I do quite a lot at home as well." What's wrong? Is third miss not satisfied? That person, perfectly formal, calling me madam in front of others. But the moment the door closed and it was just the two of us, deliberately calling me third miss instead, clearly teasing me. I rubbed my reddened earlobes and found an excuse to urge him to go out for a walk. In truth, the household manager had already prepared the visiting gifts for returning to my mother's home, but I claimed I wanted to add a few more items. Right now, looking at the tables, soft chairs, and set of doors in this room, everything made me dizzy. 2. It truly is the case that a man's heart and body are two perfectly parallel lines that never meet. If I hadn't seen the portrait of eldest sister still kept in the album in his study, I really might have believed that his daily behavior toward me meant he had already fallen in love with me. The moment I panicked and hastily put the portrait back in its place, he was standing right at the doorway looking at me. I startled, discovering a husband's secret was mortifyingly embarrassing. The great general deliberately showed no mercy, raising an eyebrow to ask, "What was Madame looking at?" I looked around evasively. Nothing, nothing. I just noticed some dust on the album. So I wiped it off. He stepped forward one pace at a time, trapping me in the chair, then leaned close to my ear and murmured, "Won't you open it and look again?" I was even more alarmed and quickly answered, "No, no, this is the General's private property. Your wife would not presume to look." He gave a soft, cold laugh. What followed? I hastily pressed my still burning face, unwilling to think about it further, and concentrated on getting him out of the house. But it was not wrong to say so. The bond between eldest sister and the great general was truly too deep. On the rare occasion we went out together, we ran straight into eldest sister. The great general and I were sitting in a small tea house selecting jewelry to give as gifts to my mother when a commotion suddenly erupted outside. "You're recklessly destroying things in this shop. Even a random item here costs dozens of taels of silver. A daughter given away in marriage is like water poured out. Both you and your money now belong to the Su family. But Xiao Qiao and I still need a few pieces of jewelry. Picking a little more should be fine." I heard a disagreeable tone and peeked outside. It turned out to be eldest sister's mother-in-law. Her thick makeup couldn't conceal the petty exhaustion on her face. The mother-in-law and her little sister-in-law helped themselves freely to jewelry, casually spending several hundred taels. Eldest sister tried to hold back her tears and said gently, "Mother, today I came to choose gifts for my own mother." The mother-in-law immediately yanked off the silver bracelet from her wrist, threw it on the table, and said with bulging eyes, "This has been worn by me for many years and was even consecrated by a high monk. Giving it to your mother is a great honor." The little sister-in-law stroked the gold bracelet on her own wrist, unwilling to take her eyes off it, and still pressed, "Sister-in-law, hurry and pay." The counter attendant said this one is the only one of its kind in the capital. If we don't buy it now, someone else might take it. The attitudes of those two were more detestable than any corrupt official I had ever seen. Though I had no love for eldest sister, seeing her treated this way, I couldn't help but feel indignant. Eldest sister looked as though she was about to break into tears and didn't know how to argue back with a single word. I looked on with fire boiling in my chest. The mother-in-law and the little sister-in-law exchanged glances, triumph plain in their eyes. They had clearly figured out eldest sister's temperament long ago and knew she would not fight back. Eldest sister had been raised by the First Lady like a precious gem, with thin skin and high self-respect. She had never encountered anything like this. Just at that moment, Su Qingyuan arrived. The moment she saw him, eldest sister broke down and wept. Su Qingyuan still had some human decency. After understanding what had happened, he said gently, "Mother, little sister, before this, Wan had already given both of you quite a lot of jewelry from her own dowry, all of it more valuable than these pieces. Today is for choosing a gift for her mother, or shall we go and look at another shop?" I thought this was still somewhat conscience-driven. But thinking it over more carefully, eldest sister had only just married in a matter of days, and already the in-law side was touching her dowry. What would come later? Who could have expected that the mother-in-law would immediately roll her eyes and start lamenting her hard life? Oh, truly the old saying is right, marry a son and forget your mother. In those years I lowered myself to serve as a servant to put you through your studies, working hard to earn every coin for your paper and brushes. Little sister, you couldn't afford to buy a new set of clothes for an entire year. Your hands ache to the bone every time it rains because of all the embroidery you did. And so she began to work through the old ledger of grievances. The little sister-in-law also pretended to sob along. Su Qingyuan immediately fell silent, his face full of awkward distress. Eldest sister hurried to say, "Mother, little sister, if you both like it, just buy it. Don't say these things anymore. When he hears it he'll feel bad." Having said that, Su Qingyuan sighed, making my wife spend money again. The mother-in-law and little sister-in-law pursed their lips, not even a single word of thanks. Poor eldest sister, several hundred taels spent, and in the end she still got scolded, the daughter of a high official, and such a penny-pinching way of spending, clearly looks down on poor families like us. My son marrying her is just bad luck. Hearing this, I wanted to burst out and give that woman 2 resounding slaps across the face. My father might be an official, but the silver in the household didn't fall from the sky. Eldest sister's rich dowry was possible only because the First Lady had emptied out her own resources to provide it. I turned my head and signaled the great general, "We should find a way to help eldest sister. Isn't it true you had one-sided feelings for her? This is the moment to show it." I even deliberately left him an opening, to give him a step to walk down. "Go ahead and help her." The great general gently pressed me down into the chair and said with a cool smile, "Drink some tea to cool your anger. Look at yourself, you're practically breathing smoke. Your eldest sister, if she can't stand up on her own, even if you charge out and help her, it'll be useless. There are people who need to suffer a little pain before they learn to think for themselves." I blurted out, "You really are cold-hearted, privately holding feelings for eldest sister, and yet you still say things like this." The moment I finished speaking, I immediately regretted it. I bit hard on the tip of my tongue. Some things you know in your heart is one thing, but to say them out loud is another, no different from poking through a thin paper screen. The great general heard this and was silent for a long time, his expression shifting. His dark eyes stared fixedly at me, like dark clouds pressing in, suffocating. I thought privately, I must have wounded him. After all, he couldn't have the person he loved, and I had poked him right in the raw nerve. 2. I didn't know whether tonight he'd even let me sleep. His technique was genuinely good, I had to give him that. The next day, when the great general took me to visit my mother's home, I sat on the soft carriage cushion with my backside still burning with pain. Last night I had been sleeping half-dazedly. The great general suddenly came back from the study, yanked me upright, and, smack, 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 dealt 3 direct slaps to my backside. Both in pain and in a daze I looked at him, not understanding at all what was happening. And yet he acted as though nothing had occurred, set me back down, offered not a single word of explanation, and simply embraced me and went to sleep. Absolutely mad. Truly, completely mad. I was angry but didn't dare say so, and quietly exacted my revenge. When I got up that morning, I stepped over him, pretended to stumble, and stamped right down on that sensitive spot. He immediately bent double in pain. "You struck my backside, I'll cost you your descendants." So we were even. I let out a quiet snicker and ran off. In any case, today was the visit home. I'd stay at the family house for a few days before coming back. By then, no matter how angry he was, it would have cooled down. Unexpectedly, on the carriage ride today, I ran straight into another problem. The great general furrowed his brow and sighed repeatedly. I heard this and pretended to show concern. "What's the matter? What's wrong with you?" He glanced at me and replied, "Painful. Come here and rub it for me." This sentence triggered my rebellious instincts. I glared, my backside still hurts too, and I don't see you rubbing it for me. The great general immediately said, that works too. He reached out his long arm and pulled me over, placing me face down across his lap. I silently slapped myself, that mouth of mine, causing trouble again. By the time we arrived at the gate, my face was already scarlet. I hurried and pushed him away. Climbing down from the carriage, we happened to run right into eldest sister and Su Qingyuan coming home at the same moment. Afraid the great general would chase after me and tease me more, I hastily smiled a greeting at them and sprinted inside. Of course, with my head in the clouds, I caught my foot on the threshold and went tumbling headfirst onto the ground. I wanted to die. Just let me die and be done with it. From behind came the sound of eldest sister and Su Qingyuan struggling to suppress their laughter. I wished I could sink into the earth and disappear. The great general strode quickly forward, pulled me to my feet, brushed the dust off me, then squeezed my wrist and ankle, checking that I hadn't been injured or sprained anything. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Eldest sister raised her voice and jabbed pointedly, Tamimi has always been clumsy, but that might be forgiven. Now you're a married woman in someone else's household and you still don't know proper conduct. I think mother should reteach you the rules, lest the general's manner laugh at our Ning family for raising children without proper education. Since we were little, eldest sister always liked to take a few veiled jabs at me. They never hurt or itched, and I never bothered to take note of them. But the great general replied with a cold face, a petty little secondary consort of a minor ninth-rank official should worry about whether her own husband has enough of a salary to live on. Instead of daring to lecture a second-rank imperially commissioned lady. The pot truly does call the kettle black. I saw the color drain instantly from eldest sister's face. She was so furious she nearly fainted on the spot. No one had ever cursed her so crudely and directly to her face like this before. The great general took my hand and led me inside. On the way, he suddenly said, I was just saying that casually just now. I didn't mean to call you a rat. Don't take it to heart. I replied automatically, it's all right. Since I was little, the First Lady and several of the concubines have been cursing at me all the time. My face has been tempered to a diamond-hard state. The First Lady, whenever she got angry, would curse whatever came to mind, calling me a lowly thing born of a lowly servant woman. A thing debased by nature and born wicked and dissolute, a lazy waste of space, born to collect a debt, livestock-brained and worthless. Anyway, she cursed, I heard it in one ear and let it out the other. Not once did I feel any real hurt. The great general lightly squeezed my hand and asked quietly, why did she curse you like that? I didn't know how to answer. Who could know why? Sometimes hating a person doesn't need a reason. Father held a banquet to entertain his two sons-in-law. Even my mother was invited, seated at the main table for the meal together. After dinner, following custom, it was time for the sons-in-law to present their gifts. The great general was perfectly fair. He gave each female family member a heavy gold bracelet, like distributing goods wholesale, all the same style, saving people from quietly comparing gifts behind each other's backs. Slightly plain, but very practical. Concubine Wang, that money-obsessed woman, smiled so wide her mouth wouldn't close. She quietly slipped out her hand and snatched second sister's bracelet, tucking it up her sleeve. Second sister stamped her foot with rage, but could do nothing about it. Then it was Su Qingyuan's turn to present gifts. Eldest sister, whether casually or deliberately, smiled and said, "The gifts Sulang has prepared for everyone are quite thoughtful." That sentence implied as clear as day that the great general's gifts had no thought behind them. Commenting on me at this particular moment, eldest sister truly didn't get tired. When the gifts were opened, everyone was struck dumb. The gift was a volume of poetry written by Su Qingyuan himself. Concubine Wang, who had come today specifically on a mission to push me down and lift eldest sister up, had to strain hard to squeeze out one sentence: "Literary works are beyond price." The great young man's gift is truly precious and sincere. Everyone had already dropped their heads, not knowing how to react. Hearing that additional line made it even more unbearable to hold in the laughter. In the end, it was father who broke the strained atmosphere with a loud laugh, telling everyone to disperse and return to their courtyards to rest. I was assigned the task of escorting the great general on a tour around the compound. Along the way, he pointed at the bare, empty pond in the yard and said with amusement, "I hear that in the past, father-in-law very much enjoyed keeping fish, but the more he kept, the fewer remained. One day while guarding against a thief, he unexpectedly caught the little culprit herself. Every 2 or 3 days you'd go sneaking in to fish one out and roast it to eat." I protested awkwardly. It truly wasn't because I was gluttonous, it's just that the fish father raised tasted too good. "Eat one and you'll remember it for the rest of your life." The great general said nothing. When we walked through the garden, he looked at the archery target set up against the wall and said thoughtfully, "Mother says that when you were 8 years old, you suddenly took a notion to become a heroic swordswoman. The household invited a female martial arts instructor to teach you, but after only a few months you couldn't stand it and gave up. You transferred to learning the slingshot instead, and practiced it to quite a high level of skill. That's my strong suit." I immediately had Suetsue bring the slingshot over, told the great general to stand 100 paces away and balance a jujube on his head. I pulled back the slingshot, loaded a stone, crack, and the jujube exploded. The great general looked at the slingshot in my hand, furrowed his brow, and clicked his tongue. I recall that 2 years ago, a young nobleman from the Yong'an Marquis household was walking on the street when someone struck and shattered his jade hairpiece with a stone. Judging by the technique, it was clearly you. I widened my eyes and immediately cried my innocence. It wasn't some random act of mischief. The detestable young man from the Yong'an Marquis household bullied me first. He threw stones at me, my head swelled up with a lump the size of a steamed bun. Truly, I'm thoroughly impressed. My father and mother had been chatting with him for just a little while, and even my tiniest secrets had been surrendered completely. The fish stealing, the slingshot skill, nothing was left hidden. In the future I absolutely must bring him home less often. I glowered and muttered to myself that it was clear he was very curious about me. I hadn't expected him to say seriously, "Madam, on the other hand, has not the slightest curiosity about me." A thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Curiosity is the beginning of love. Could it be that the great general has feelings for me? I looked at him suspiciously, and he unexpectedly pulled me behind a nearby decorative rock garden. The light plunged to dimness, the two of us pressed close together, breath mingling. I leaned against his chest and stammered, "Being H here is not right." The great general looked at me and gave a low, quiet laugh. "Madam, you truly are a beauty-craving little temptress." A moment later, I understood why he said that. As it turned out, eldest sister and the First Lady were walking this way. He hadn't wanted to encounter them, so he pulled me in here to hide. My embarrassment turned to indignation. I punched him in the chest. He grasped my hand, bent his head, and pressed a light kiss to it, saying soothingly, "Madam, don't be in a hurry. When we get back to the manor, whatever game you want to play, your humble husband will accommodate you." I stamped my foot in frustration. Truly, there was no winning an argument against him. Outside, the First Lady suppressed her anger and said, "Right from the start I wasn't pleased with the Sioux family, and yet you insisted on marrying into it. Now look, being bossed around by that old woman." To this day they still haven't even shared a proper wedding night, and today coming home they brought a few worthless books that made us all lose face. Eldest sister cried and said, "I had clearly prepared generous gifts, but before I left the house my mother-in-law switched them." The First Lady said with irritation, "You've done nothing but cry. Look at that wretched Ning Tam. She flatters the great general like honey being poured in his ear. She's young and already been given a second-rank imperial title, certainly thanks to the great general petitioning the emperor on her behalf. I shouldn't have softened and let you marry into a fallen household like the Sioux family." Eldest sister insisted obstinately, "Mother, in my dream, Ning Tam married Su Qingyuan and lived warm, happy days. Later Su Qingyuan rose to become prime minister, and she became the most distinguished noble lady in the capital. But me, if I had followed your advice and married Li Su, on the wedding night he immediately left on campaign to the northwest, leaving me to live as a soldier's faithful waiting wife. Then he was killed in battle and the emperor forced me to be buried alive with him." As she said this she cried even more miserably. "Mother, can it be you still want me to repeat my fate from the previous life?" I was completely frozen in shock upon hearing this. No wonder eldest sister had first shown little interest in the top scholar, then fallen gravely ill and suddenly insisted desperately on marrying him. It turned out she had dreamed of her previous life. The great general stood silent with furrowed brows, not knowing what he was thinking. The First Lady heartbrokenly embraced her, sighing, "My child, a dream is only a dream. But Ning Tam marrying the great general has brought real and tangible benefits. Mother knows the old woman pressured you. I could tear her face apart with my own hands. But this life is yours to live, Mother cannot live it for you." Eldest sister said furiously, "In that dream, Ning Tam was on familiar terms with that old woman, and even went out for tea and theater with the unmarried younger sister-in-law Su Qiao. When she missed her own mother, Su Qingyuan would specially ask father's permission and often bring her mother home to stay. Su Qingyuan, strict as he was, still always indulged Ning Tam. She could yank his face toward her in the middle of a crowd and he'd still manage to smile. So why did I get married, and yet everything turned out completely different? I thought about the handsome face of Su Qingyuan, who opened his mouth only to speak of virtue and propriety, always talking about what was proper this, and what was proper that. I truly couldn't imagine how I could yank his face toward me the way eldest sister's dream described. As for his mother and sister, clearly money-hungry people blinded by silver. Telling me to live in harmony with them would be harder than climbing to heaven. After a while, the First Lady sighed softly, her voice complicated. "Wainer, have you ever considered that perhaps the issue is not about whom you married?" Eldest sister looked blankly at the First Lady, who closed her eyes and heaved a heavy sigh. "But that Ning Tam, no matter who she marries, she knows how to live well." Eldest sister clutched her head and let out a cry, "Mother, You know, from childhood I have always competed, always wanting to be better than everyone. I detest that lazy creature with every fiber of my being. And yet you say words that stab straight at my heart like this. I couldn't hold back and muttered quietly to myself, eldest sister, since childhood you've always competed, wanting to surpass everyone in everything. It's fine to work hard on your own, but why drag me into it? Always scolding me for not being diligent. The great general gently pinched my chin like he was coaxing me. Having an other people's elder sister type of sister is truly a tragedy. Music, chess, calligraphy, painting, she wanted to score perfectly in everything. There is no perfection in this world. The mountain is always higher than the mountain before it. Others were better than her, and she worked twice as hard to catch up. Many times I truly found her too stubborn for words. Eldest sister seemed to be in a trance, murmuring to herself. On what basis does she get to live without a care in the world? When mother scolded her harshly, she was like an idiot, just quietly gnawing on an apple. When father punished her by making her kneel in the ancestral hall, she just calmly fell asleep there. She never cared what others thought of her. That day at the Prime Minister's household banquet, I wrote the top-ranking poem. She couldn't write even half a line, and yet she still shamelessly latched onto the arm of the Prime Minister's daughter. She said something like, "In this world, having a talented elder sister means you also need me as a failure to make her shine. Spare me." A single sentence made the Prime Minister's daughter laugh until she nearly fell over. And the girl called her dear little sister. The more she talked, the paler eldest sister's face became. "Mother, I am jealous of her. I hate her. Clearly she doesn't put in any effort at all, and yet everyone cherishes her and pays attention to her. I don't believe it. Just wait, when the great general dies in battle in the Northwest, let's see if she'll still be living this carefree life." Having said this, she passed out from sheer fury and indignation. The First Lady cried out in alarm, calling people over, and hurriedly carried her away. I was a little dazed inside, thinking, eldest sister is jealous of me? She has natural talent and she works hard. Even if I worked myself to death I couldn't match even a fraction of her. I could only let things be and trust to fate. She was childhood friends with the Prime Minister's daughter and moved like a fish in water at the Prime Minister's household. Whereas I was just a concubine-born girl attending their banquet, all I could do was try desperately to make jokes so someone might notice me for a moment. Stories like these, there was no end to them. The great general was silent for a long time, then said coldly, "All self-inflicted suffering. Don't take those words to heart. As for that dream she mentioned, I think it's just absurd nonsense. Su Qingyuan is weak and spineless, not even a trace of backbone. What is there to admire about him?" I gave a light pat on his chest and teased, "You're wonderful, my husband." He's gnashing his teeth to say Su Qingyuan's name. Could he actually be jealous? The great general answered decisively, "Yes, I'm jealous." I suspected my own ears. I stared at him blankly. He looked at me, his gaze deep and steady, and said each word clearly, "Madam, I have feelings for you." Epilogue. The great general's perspective. The matter of my being fond of Ning third miss, everyone in the household knew it. Only she was a block of wood and completely failed to notice. That year I returned to the capital. His Majesty saw that I stayed home every day doing nothing, my face dark and gloomy, and so he gave me a secret mission to investigate the third prince, to look into who he was associating with, whether he harbored any treasonous ambitions. I came to the household of the Minister of Revenue, the Ning family. Unexpectedly, I found a peculiar little notebook under the pillow of Ning 3rd Mississippi. Inside it were listed the names of a great many young men of marriageable age in the capital. Sons of upright and simple families, young noblemen of fallen houses, literary talents from the Hanlon Academy, and my name was right there among them. The handwriting of Ning 3rd Miss was so bad it made one wonder if she had dipped a chicken's foot in ink to write it. The two characters, Li Su, had been written so thoroughly destroyed they were painful to behold. I forced myself to read the annotations below. Li Su, second-rank great general, salary reasonably stable, a proper reclusive talent. Advantages: simple family, no internal rivalry for favor to worry about. Broad shoulders, slender waist, strong build, physical matters with the wife, excellent. Disadvantages: too quiet, doesn't know how to joke. Summary: economically efficient male type. A viable marriage candidate. Will proceed to approach slowly. And so I grew curious about who this person who planned to approach me slowly actually was. The first time I saw her was on a spring day. The old princess consort had sent out invitations to watch the flowers, which was plainly a matchmaking banquet in disguise. The old princess consort whispered to me, "His Majesty is anxious about your marriage situation. All the young ladies are here today. If you see anyone you like, just say the word." The young ladies at the event that day were all dressed simply and modestly. Whenever my gaze swept over them, they would immediately bow their heads and look away, as if I were some fierce demon. I privately found this quite amusing. I came from humble origins. In their eyes I was no different from a newly prosperous commoner. No prestigious family, no connections, no learning. How could I possibly catch their eye? It made me think again of Ning 3rd Mississippi. In her eyes, I was actually someone worth considering as a real match, which was quite interesting. Hearing someone call out, "Eldest sister, you've finally come." That was Ning Deyuan, the elder half-sister of hers by a different mother. I looked up and was slightly startled. Intelligence reports had come back saying that Ning 3rd Miss's formal name was Ning Deyu, though she had never let anyone call her that. And every time she heard it she flushed red with embarrassment for no discernible reason. To my surprise, while I was still staring in a daze at the eldest miss, the old princess consort had quietly taken this as an indication that I liked Ning Deyuan, adding yet another layer of misunderstanding. The truth was that I saw Ning 3rd Miss in the rear flower garden of the prince's mansion. Peonies were in full bloom, their brilliant colors surrounding a young woman. She wore a pale green robe, a purple gold phoenix inlaid crown on her head, and held in her hand a golden staff. She was smiling like a flower in bloom, her eyes bright and sparkling. Just one glance and you felt she was brimming with vitality, as though she had gathered the spirit of the entire spring within herself. Around her was a crowd of children, all clamoring eagerly, "Tabi Jia, tell us more." Ning 3rd Miss twirled the staff in a circle and spoke in a strange, dramatic voice. "Ah, old venerable ones, continuing from yesterday's story, Tang Seng and his 3 disciples had journeyed to Fire Mountain, and the raging flames blocked their path, making it impossible to continue. She talked about the Bull Demon King, the Iron Fan Princess, one mythological character after another, completely captivating to listen to. Finally the maidservant Suetsue reminded in a low voice, "Young miss, the banquet is almost over. We should be leaving." The children immediately let out a howl of protest. The young nobleman from the Pingkong Manor shouted, "Tomorrow I'll beg grandmother to hold a party and invite Tabijia. Be sure to come." The young miss from the Jingwa Duke's Manor clamored, "The day after that it's our house's turn, I'm inviting Tabijia too." One by one they raised their hands, competing to invite her. I looked at Ning 3rd Mrs. Bright. Sunny smile and thought privately, no wonder this year the banquets in the capital have been springing up like mushrooms after rain. And no wonder a concubine-born daughter like her had such a good reputation among the aristocratic families. The intelligence reports had said she was also well liked within the household and had quite a solid standing. So this was her method. As long as she won over this little band of small ancestors, she had a reliable protective shield of her own. Tabijia, this purple gold phoenix crown and golden staff, could your younger sisters touch them for a moment? The children blinked and looked up hopefully. Ning 3rd Miss laughed generously, "When I get home I'll make one set for each of you." The children cheered. Tsuetsue immediately opened the silver pouch. The children voluntarily produced their silver coins. One by one, shining white silver coins flowed into Ning 3rd Mrs. pouch. She smiled until her eyes curved like crescent moons, the very picture of a money-loving little talent. In the days that followed I attended several more banquets, occasionally sauntering deliberately past in front of her. Hadn't she said she would approach me slowly? Why still no action? Each time Ning 3rd Miss would only flush red, take one look at me, and quickly slip away. Sometimes I even felt she was secretly observing me, but every time my gaze swept in her direction, she would immediately look away. In the end I couldn't hold back any longer and ordered the informant planted in the Ning household to secretly take her notebook out for me to read further. The page about me had been added to and embellished in great detail. Li Su, second-rank Great General, salary reasonably stable, reclusive talent, correction, scratch reclusive, he's actually not reclusive at all. Advantages: simple family, no inner courtyard rivalry. Broad shoulders, slender waist, powerful physique, physical matters with the wife, extraordinary. Also plays the flute, sounds wonderful. Teaches children to kick shuttlecock, very approachable. Even the way he eats is handsomely focused. Hee hee. Today I saw him drinking wine. Oh heavens, so devastatingly attractive, I want to give him a kiss. Damn him, a person whose exterior is cold but interior is hot is truly too adorable. Smiled once and I wanted to kiss him immediately. Done for, dreamed of Li Su again last night, all because of that hand of his catching me. No good, must confess my feelings, even if I die, must confess. If I can't kiss Li Su's lips, touch his abs, or climb up on top of him, my looks will wither, my spirit will decay, and the world will be destroyed. In the notebook she had already imagined tearing open my clothes, sitting astride my waist, and making me call her beautiful elder sister. And yet from the time we had met to this point, she and I had exchanged exactly one sentence. She said, "Many thanks to the great general." And I hadn't even had time to respond, no need for thanks. The only thought in my head was, I must propose, absolutely must propose. I understood clearly now, Ning Tam was a frightened little rabbit. If I didn't take the initiative, she might spend her whole life never emerging from her shell. Who could have expected that His Majesty would then pull one of his stunts? He summoned me to the palace with a tone of great distress. I hear that recently, in order to court the eldest miss of the Ning household, you've been preening every day like a peacock in heat, and yet she doesn't even spare you a glance. Your subject is very worried about you. Hearing this, my heart went half cold. Sure enough, His Majesty had made another foolish move. He had suggested to the Minister of Revenue, the father of Ning third Miss, that he should not arrange a marriage for the eldest Miss, and then in my name send an abundance of rare treasures to the Ning household. And so the entire capital believed I liked Ning Deyuan. Later Tsuetsue reported back, Ning Deyuan, in order to refuse me, had pressured Ning Tam into seducing me. At first I had intended to step forward and clarify things, but then I reconsidered and decided to leave it. That Ning Tam, if no one gave her a push, she'd spend her whole life tucked inside her tortoise shell and never come out. Besides, she seemed vague on the outside but was very clear on the inside. If she truly didn't want this, even if Ning Deyuan used 1,000 tricks, she couldn't be forced. If I can't kiss Li Su's lips, touch his abs, or climb up on top of him, my looks will wither, my spirit will decay, and the world will be destroyed. In the notebook she had already imagined tearing open my clothes, sitting astride my waist, and making me call her beautiful elder sister. And yet from the time we had met to this point, she and I had exchanged exactly one sentence. She said, "Many thanks to the great general." And I hadn't even had time to respond, "No need for thanks." The only thought in my head was, I must propose, absolutely must propose. I understood clearly now, Ning Tam was a frightened little rabbit. If I didn't take the initiative, she might spend her whole life never emerging from her shell. Who could have expected that His Majesty would then pull one of his stunts? He summoned me to the palace with a tone of great distress. "I hear that recently, in order to court the eldest miss of the Ning household, you've been preening every day like a peacock in heat, and yet she doesn't even spare you a glance. Your subject is very worried about you." Hearing this, my heart went half cold. Sure enough, His Majesty had made another foolish move. He had suggested to the Minister of Revenue, the father of Ning third Miss, that he should not arrange a marriage for the eldest Miss, and then in my name send an abundance of rare treasures to the Ning household. And so the entire capital believed I liked Ning Deyuan. Later Tsuetsue reported back, Ning Deyuan, in order to refuse me, had pressured Ning Tam into seducing me. At first I had intended to step forward and clarify things, but then I reconsidered and decided to leave it. That Ning Tam, if no one gave her a push, she'd spend her whole life tucked inside her tortoise shell and never come out. Besides, she seemed vague on the outside but was very clear on the inside. If she truly didn't want this, even if Ning Deyuan used 1,000 tricks, she couldn't be forced. It was also a convenient opportunity to test how far her feelings went. And so, on the day I heard that Ning Tam had actually jumped into the lake, in my heart I felt both alarm and joy. Bringing her back to the manor, on the wedding night I was also a little anxious. I knew she liked men who dressed handsomely and had fine looks, while my body was covered in scars from head to toe. I was afraid of frightening her, but it turned out that beauty makes people brave. After Ning Tam married me, she grew some extraordinary nerve. In the middle of the night she crept out to find me, watched me practice swordplay, and even got a nosebleed. But she assumed the heart inside me still clung to her sister. So although she was intimate with me physically, she was gradually creating emotional distance inside. She saw the portrait of Ning Deyuan in the album and pretended not to know about it. In truth, that portrait had been painted by someone at His Majesty's orders long ago, supposedly to comfort my lovesick longing. I hadn't yet had time to deal with it before she had already seen it. She deliberately pretended not to have seen it, determinedly intending to maintain a relationship of outwardly close but inwardly distant with me. This made me simultaneously exasperated and amused. That evening I sat silently in the study deep into the night, and when I returned to the room and found her curled up in the blanket sleeping like a little caterpillar, I was so frustrated inside that I yanked her up and dealt her a few smacks on the backside to vent my anger. But she looked at me through half-sleeping eyes with such an innocent expression that I softened immediately, held her in my arms, and kissed her without stopping. I had understood this frightened little rabbit all too well. I planned to use the occasion of her visit home to clear up all the misunderstandings. After she heard everything and stood there in a daze, I took hold of her hand, gave a light cough, and said seriously, "Now do you understand? The one he was interested in from the beginning was you." Unexpectedly she suddenly cried out, "But if father had really been plotting treason, wouldn't the whole family have been beheaded? Thank heaven, he's just someone who's a bit greedy for petty things and weak and useless." "And Tsue Tsue is an informant? She knows lightness kung fu? Does she sleep on the ceiling rafters?" I sighed and gently tapped her forehead. "Is there nothing else you want to say to me?" She bowed her head, both ears turning red. "What else is there to say? Haven't you read through my whole notebook already?" Bringing up the notebook, I had my grievances. She had only thought about my body, never once mentioned my soul. Ning Tam said, "Ah," and covered her face. "I like you, which is why I want to kiss you." "It's not like I want to kiss every handsome man I see, is it? I'm not some beauty-obsessed madwoman." She refused to discuss this further, and I thought perhaps she was afraid, like a snail that hides inside its shell, not letting anyone see its vulnerable soft spots. Thinking about it, it made sense. A concubine-born daughter who had seen through all the battles of the inner courtyard, whose mother had suffered so much for her sake, how could she easily give her heart away? But that was all right. The two of us still had a whole long lifetime ahead. Ning Tam asked me with puzzlement, "His Majesty treats you really well. Could it be you're his secret son?" I laughed and tweaked her nose. "Don't talk nonsense. Do you know the name Divine General Su?" She nodded. "The hero of the great Xia dynasty. Who doesn't know of him? He personally led the army against the northern barbarians and then died from severe wounds. His Majesty mourned deeply, wept for 3 days and nights, suspended court for 3 sessions, and the whole capital wore white for the funeral, seeing the great general's soul on its way. Before my father passed, he told me, he and His Majesty had grown up together, as close as hand and arm. If he died, His Majesty would bring me back to the capital and cherish me greatly. But the capital valued the literary arts over the martial. He didn't want me growing up as a weak bookish type. Before the imperial decree reached me, he had already dismissed all his loyal servants throughout the Northwest. I cut off my name as the general's son and grew up as an orphan in the cold desert. Only then did I understand how deep a father's love can run. People in the army all praised me for talent in commanding troops, but in truth, when I first started out I couldn't even hold my own against petty street thugs. At 15 I entered the military camp and started from the bottom as a flag bearer, climbing up step by step. After many military achievements, the garrison commander, an old friend of my father's, recognized me by my resemblance. And so I was promoted to great general and forced by His Majesty to return to the capital. Ning Tam heard this, her eyes misting over faintly. She sighed softly. "You went hungry and thirsty and were beaten. Did you miss your parents?" My heart clenched. I held her for a long time before saying, "At first I missed them terribly, but later there was no time left to miss anyone." She thumped her chest and promised earnestly, "From now on I'll give you a good life. You can count on me." But inwardly I was carrying a heavier worry, afraid that Ning Duan's dream had some truth to it. From intelligence reports out of the northwest, the northern barbarians were massing their forces. Before winter, there was likely to be a decisive battle. I feared I would have to go to the battlefield once more. If I died, what would happen to Ning Tam? But unexpectedly she brought it up on her own first. "I also want to go to the northwest with you, but I can't bear to leave Mother." I held her tight and soothed her, "Then stay in the capital and wait for me. Don't worry, even if I die, His Majesty won't force you to be buried with me. The property in the manor will be left to you. If in the future you meet someone good, feel free to remarry." This time Ning Tam said nothing more. On the day I prepared to leave the capital and head for the northwest, she didn't come to see me off. I stood at the city gate for a long time, and was about to mount my horse and leave when suddenly a carriage came racing up. Ning Tam stuck her head out of the window and called out loudly, "Li Su, wait for me. Wait for me." In that moment the blood in my body seemed to surge and boil. I spurred my horse forward to meet her. She patted her chest and declared, "Made it just in time. I've already smuggled Mother out of the household. We have no more ties holding us back. Let's go." Inside the carriage sat her mother, looking completely bewildered, not knowing what to say. I tucked Ning Tam under my arm and carried her straight onto my horse, kissed her several firm times. Ning Tam's face turned crimson as she hit and pushed me away. I held her against my chest, not letting her see my eyes going red. "I will treat you well. Ning Tam, I won't die. Even with only one breath left, I'll crawl back out of the underworld to be by your side. I won't let you be married off to someone else." Ending. A year before at the northwest had seen a great battle of extreme peril. Li Su nearly lost his life, but in the end managed to drive the northern barbarians back to their lair. For at least the next 10 years, they would not be able to raise their heads again. Imperial decrees of reward arrived from the capital as plentifully as though they cost nothing. Year after year the emperor issued edicts urging Li Su to return to the capital for a visit. This year it could no longer be delayed. The whole family traveled light with simple luggage, heading back to the capital. The moment they arrived at the city gate, Ning Mingtong came running out to meet them and immediately flew into a furious rage. "Ning Du, you are truly bold. How dare you take your mother away without a single word of permission? Get down from the carriage immediately. Don't talk to me about imperially commissioned lady or general's wife. As long as you still carry the Ning family name, I can still beat the skin off your back." Ning Tam hid inside the carriage, covered her ears, and snuck a peek at her mother. Her mother Lady Sun gave a light poke to her forehead and smiled. "Only now you're afraid?" Ning Tam stuck out her tongue and acted spoiled. "Mother, could you really bear to be separated from your own daughter? She's your biological child. How could you not take her side?" Lady Sun lifted the curtain and faced Ning Mingtong's furious expression with perfect composure. "My lord, it was this concubine who ran away of her own accord. Whether you wish to sell me or beat me to death, it is entirely at your discretion." 5 years without meeting. Ning Mingtong looked at her and saw her bearing more graceful than ever. His tongue tied itself in a knot, what is there to say that's so serious? In my eyes, could it be that I'm the kind of heartless and faithless person? Li Su arrived at this moment, carrying a box of crispy biscuits he had bought at a roadside stall, and raised an eyebrow to say, 5 years without meeting, and father-in-law runs out to curse and threaten upon the very first meeting? Mother-in-law spent years in the Northwest treating injured soldiers and was once commended by the court itself. If you wish to punish her, you should submit a memorial to His Majesty first. Ning Mingtong was stumped for words. Lady Sun had originally come from a medical family, but later her family had become entangled in a lawsuit involving a death. Both parents had been destroyed by an evil man, and wanting revenge was the reason she had become a concubine. But unexpectedly, in the Northwest, her medical skills came to be greatly valued and she shone brilliantly. Now she was no longer the little concubine who could be ordered around as others wished. 2. In recent years everyone said his luck had been good. Eldest daughter married to a top scholar with boundless prospects. If only anyone knew that Duyuan came home crying every day wanting a divorce. She lamented endlessly about being unable to endure the impoverished life at the Su family home, and even more unable to endure her husband's cold indifference. As for the concubine-born daughter, she had married a great general beloved by the emperor. What was even more infuriating was that this daughter had secretly taken his wife away with her. He couldn't scold her, couldn't beat her. All he could do was write letter after letter to the Northwest urging her to bring Lady Sun back. And the unfilial daughter's reply was a concise 4 characters, "Father can wait." Humph, outwardly glorious, inwardly suffering to the extreme. Ning Tam looked at the box of crispy biscuits, nearly drooling. Li Su laughed and handed them to her. She hadn't paid any attention to them when they walked past the stall. But now they were far away she remembered them. Recently she had been noticing that she craved food more often, always suddenly wanting this and that. Lady Sun looked at her daughter's round face and vaguely guessed something. When they returned to the general's manor, she immediately told Li Su her suspicion. Li Su startled, and quickly had several imperial physicians summoned to take her pulse. The result confirmed she was indeed pregnant. Ning Tam pressed her belly in astonishment. "Oh wait, I'm going to be a mother?" Li Su meanwhile stared fixedly at her belly, not joyful in the slightest. For the next 10 days, he couldn't eat well or sleep well, growing visibly pale and gaunt. By the time a full beard had grown on his face like a wandering beggar, he finally gritted his teeth and said, "Ning Tam, this child cannot be kept." Ning Tam glanced at him. She knew Li Su's mother had died giving birth to him. Deep in his heart, childbirth cast a shadow over him. So she used the excuse of feeling tired and said they could drink the medicine another day. This went on like this, and by the time the pregnancy was past 5 months, her belly was plainly showing. Li Su was so full of regret he wanted to castrate himself on the spot. Meanwhile Ning Tam was not idle at all. Drawing on her knowledge of reproduction from her past life, she passed it on to her mother. Lady Sun received this enlightenment and began caring for and treating several expectant mothers, successfully delivering a number of babies. Her medical skill soared upward like a kite catching the wind. The matter of her own daughter's childbirth was a great affair that affected a human life, and she devoted every ounce of her energy to it without daring to relax even half a measure. Ning Tam looked at all the people fussing and worrying around her, and sighed inwardly. If only she had studied medicine in her past life. But she had chosen law, a field even dogs despised, She had barely found a job after graduation. The very first day she followed her supervisor to court, she was stabbed to death by the opposing party's family. Other people worked to earn money. She worked and lost her life. Fortunately, in her past life she had been an orphan, with no lingering attachments. And so Ning Tam drifted in a daze into the delivery room. Everything had been prepared with meticulous care and sterilized thoroughly clean. She had adjusted her diet so the baby wouldn't grow too large. Every day she exercised and did her yoga. But giving birth, how could there be a birth that involved no suffering? Even though this delivery was considered smooth, Ning Tam still endured no small amount of hardship. When it was over, a baby girl had been born, wrinkled as a tiny monkey. Li Su was the first to burst into tears, saying through clenched teeth, "No more children." That very night he had the imperial physician prescribe a permanent remedy. After taking it, his heart finally steadied somewhat. He had finally understood that all those roundabout contraceptive methods were unreliable. Only cutting things off at the root was truly fail-safe. When he returned to the room, Ning Tam was sleeping soundly. The baby, wrapped in swaddling, was asleep on the small bed beside her. The candlelight in the room was dim and wavering. Li Su thought, now at last he was a person with a family of his own. The end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.